Cesar, the crowd pleaser. If you need to pick me up, ladies, we gon' change your demeanor. Cesar, the crowd pleaser. We gon' do a little dance, we gon' make the naysayers believe us. Hey girl, had a long day, you tired from work. Throw me some dollars and I remove my shirt. You can touch me too, these are the perks. Free yourself, lose your mind and go berserk, and go berserk, and go berserk, and go berserk.
Make way for the bad guy.
What is up, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Crowd Pleaser, the podcast that brings you the inside scoop on what it takes to be a male entertainer in today's age. I'm your host, Cesar, the Crowd Pleaser. That's right. And today we have episode 67. I'm going to be flying solo today, sadly, but that is okay because we are going to talk about one of my favorite hobbies that I want to share with you, and that is the aerial arts. We're doing an aerial arts breakdown where I'm going to be discussing in slightly more detail all the circus type apparatuses and things you can do as a hobby or for a workout or for fitness or just to test yourself or for performing. But as usual, I'm going to mention our Patreon. That is patreon.com/crowdpleaser. That's right. Where, running a podcast is not free. Cost time, cost hosting fees, cost editing fees, programming, things like that. And so some patrons are able to give back to the show to help me keep the lights on and keep this show going. So I want to give a special shout out to all those patrons. And of course, as usual, every show I give a shout out to a particular patron. And this week's patron of the show is Amber Tao. Amber, you rock. Thank you so much for all your continuous contributions. I really appreciate that. We really appreciate that. It goes a long way towards helping me making a better show. Of course, I'd like to mention as well that it's not just a one-way street. I do offer special perks to my patrons to include the video versions of all these podcasts, as well as behind-the-scenes footage on potential acts I am making, and prints that I send out in the mail, etc., etc. So definitely check it out. Once again, patreon.com/crowdpleaser. Next up, it is La Bear Dallas. This is my home office where I operate 5 nights a week, every Wednesday to Sunday evening, 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys want to come out, gentlemen, yes, we have an amateur night every Thursday night. That's right, ladies. If you got a good-looking friend that wants to try out and be a part of our dream team, or just, hey, wants to test their mettle on stage, bring them out to La Bear Dallas every Thursday night around between 10:30 and 11:30. We have our amateur contest where you guys can come out and take the stage and see if you got what it takes, man. So definitely come out, check it out, let it know for your friends. Hey, even if they lose a dare or bet, by all good times, by all means, it is a good time regardless. So definitely check it out once again, guys. La Bear Dallas. Finally, very briefly, I want to mention that I am streaming live every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday mornings at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ. So where you can catch me just kind of being myself, hanging out. Come talk to me. We chat it up while I'm playing some games. We talk through moves, talk strategy, and things like that. So, excuse me. Sorry, guys. It is allergy season here in Texas. And I gotta say, it has been hitting me hard lately, but the show must go on. And so I'm here doing the podcast, mouth breathing as I do it. Can you tell? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you can. But all right, guys, that's going to do it. That's it. Not much of a big intro, but that's fine. It's normally the way it works. So let's, I guess I could give you a small update. Nah, I'm not even bothered. All right, let's move on, guys. Aerial circus stuff. That's right, guys. For a lot of you that know, I have constantly been trying to improve and evolve my show to bring you guys the best kind of show I can. And in that process, thanks to shout out to Taylor Cole and Axel Rains. That's right, two great performers that I was lucky enough to share stage with. Those guys brought, Taylor Cole brought silks or tissue to La Bear. And when he decided to move on to Houston, Axel Rains decided to take it over. And then obviously when he decided to step down and retire, I was able to take it from him as he was so kindly to offer to me. And that's what started my journey down this amazing path that I'm so glad that I'll never look back from. And so shout out to both those guys for bringing it and putting on a great show. Like once again, Taylor Cole is the originator of it, and Axel Rains, you can catch him in the LeBear documentary doing the silks. But that started my journey. I just started to do it. So I started to be self-taught for a while and realized, thanks to Axel's encouragement, that I needed to go to school and learn, because it's very dangerous and there's lots of small nuances that you need to learn. And so I began taking classes and immediately fell in love with the art and this sport. So I wanted to share this with you. A couple of disclaimers. First off, absolutely anyone can do circus stuff. I promise you. The only thing that is required is a positive, no-quit attitude. Very few things that happen in circus are something that people just do naturally, and so it takes time to do it. But being a teacher for over a year now and having people that have never touched the inside of a gym or fabric ever in their lives, I've had them doing moves before they left the class and having a great time. So I promise you, there is some kind of class or apparatus for you if you want to try it. It does require a decent amount of physicality though, so I will say that go in there with an open mind. Excuse me. And in the fact that not all things are going to come easy to you. I will say think about safety first. Try not to rush into things. It's very easy to get injured if you aren't aware of what your body is doing, but trust your instructor, trust the equipment, and understand that they have your best interest in mind regardless of what they might be saying, if you might like it or not, i.e. if they ask you to do a progression or something that seems a little easier first before doing the more difficult move. But yeah, guys, that's my disclaimers. That being said, most cities offer some kind of circus. You just have to look for it. Most of the time you look for an aerial fitness type thing is a good start, or silks. That might be a good thing to look for in Google, trying to find places. Aerial and circus are probably your two biggest things that you can Google for to find what you're looking for. All right, guys, first up, we have pole. That's right. Believe it or not, there are pole competitions and competitors and classes and fitness and all kinds of pole things that are outside of a female strip club. So I don't want you to get discouraged or put a bad stereotype on it. Not every lady does pole as a stripper, and even the ones that are, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Case in point, I am a stripper. But I know they have been catching a lot of flack from social media in general about that kind of thing. Even pole fitness gets ranked on. Let me tell you, they are some of the nicest and most powerful women I have ever met in my life, and gentlemen as well. So, with that being said, let's start with pole. Pole. It is a solid metal apparatus. Typically locked in on the ground and then locked in the air, but not always. Sometimes it's simply locked in on the ground if it's a portable stage or whatnot. A lot of times they are rigged to either be absolutely stationary or they're spinners where they actually rotate. Most advanced students or performers or anything of that use spinners because everything looks a lot cooler when you're spinning. There is a small variation of this called Chinese pole, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it actually, instead of being a metal pole, it is a metal pole, but it has a rubber sock or sleeve over it to increase traction where you're able to do different kinds of stunts because of that. That being said, it also limits. There are many variations of pole nowadays because of the fact that the internet has made the universe a much smaller place, which means that, of course, as usual, everyone has to try so much harder to stand out. Which that is something for a different podcast, which, that might not be a bad idea. Anywho, the interesting thing about pole, which I will discuss, are one of the big differences between metal and fabric or malleable apparatuses, is the fact that the dynamic of it. In pole, you are the one that is moving around the object or the apparatus, versus with, like, for example, fabric or rope, the apparatus is moving around you. Pole is a lot of fun, and it typically is associated with groundwork, so you do learn some ground choreography. Flexibility and strength are still very important, as well as body awareness, which is going to come across, like I said, all of these aerial arts. So it's not the easiest thing to do, but I do encourage everyone to do it. One other disclaimer is that all these apparatus are gender neutral. That's right. Both male and female and non-binary can jump on any of these apparatuses. There might be certain moves that maybe physically, anatomy-wise, certain ones may not be able to do, but in most cases, they cross over quite well. But yeah, Pole has several moves that are super beautiful, super moves that are dizzy, some moves that will leave certain marks on your body, and some moves that are just straight power moves. Typically, when people do pole, they end up wearing as little fabric on their bodies as possible, mainly because of the fact that pole is metal and you want to stick to it or be as grippy, and cloth or fabric just doesn't grip. So I have a problem with that because I sweat, so I end up becoming quite slippery. But in most cases, you will see people in like something like booty shorts and maybe a sports bra or just booty shorts for guys when they perform their pole routines, because skin is the most grip offered, I guess, so it offers the most traction. But all right, guys, that is pole. One variation of pole that I do want to mention, because it has increased in popularity, is lollipop. And so lollipop is, we go back to, like I said, where poles are attached on the bottom and the top. Lollipops actually are only attached on the ground. Reason being is at the top end of the pole, there is a giant metal ring or hoop, so shaping it like a lollipop. I simply think this is the brainchild of someone that took lyra, which we'll get to later on, and pole, and combined them together. But yeah, it's a fun apparatus. You see it happening. Another version is a silk pole, I believe is the name of it. Please let me know in the comments below if I have the name incorrect, or pole silk or something like that, where it is similar to the lollipop, where it is planted firmly in the foundation or the base of it, but then the top actually has fabric or silks hanging from it, and you get to do different things off of that. I have actually I've seen it, but I've not seen a performance on it, so I don't know how it works or how great or bad it is, but that is another variation. And then obviously there is hanging pole, aerial pole. I'm not really sure what the word is for that, but this is actually flipped the other way around, where the base of it is free floating, and then the top of the pole is essentially tied to some kind of aerial apparatus, a little bit like nylon webbing or toe straps to give it a little bit of play. And so you're able to kind of spin it off its standard axis and maybe make yourself the center of the spin versus the outside. So once again, not 100% sure on the name of that one. Maybe flying pole, that might be correct. Maybe flying pole's it. But those are the base foundations for pole fitness. If you guys want to scroll back a couple of episodes, probably a lot now, but to the power couple episode, that is actually the owner and husband of the owner. So I guess the owner of the studio I work at and her husband, and they are both avid pole performers and instructors. You can check out their episode and get a more thorough breakdown on pole. Let me know if you guys want a more in-depth conversation about pole, and I will get one of the instructors that's a good friend of mine from my studio. She has won multiple pole championships in her time and is constantly growing, and get her on the show to answer the questions you have. So if you do, by all means, let me know. Message me on the Patreon or the Facebook or Instagram if you want a professional pole artist on the show and what questions you have for him. Yeah, I like that. All right, sweet. Moving right along, guys, we have aerial yoga is our entry level. This is one that a lot of people feel like they're doing circus stuff when they're doing. And this is simply a fabric that is looped, right? So it's looped. So the tie downs or the ends are up in the air, tied to the rigging point, and it just makes a giant kind of like sack, so to speak. They are typically hanged fairly low to the ground, probably about waist level or lower, and you perform yoga stuff from them. These are really good about working on flexibility as well as body awareness. Not huge, don't get me wrong. It doesn't teach you all the body awareness, because in most cases you are still somewhat planted, and there are times in aerial where you are not. But it is a fantastic foundation to get you somewhat comfortable in fabric, as well as holding your body upside down and holding yourself off the ground. This is a great entry level thing. Granted, I would not necessarily count this as circus performance. It is more like a preparatory class, but it is really good for the body, and it is good to kind of slowly dip your toes into this. Once again, a lot of people will consider themselves aerialists when they take aerial yoga. Sadly, it is not quite the case. Not that I'm knocking them, don't get me wrong. All the instructors are hardworking people, and they are fantastic. Just the basis of the dynamic of it, I feel like, is not necessarily performance and more for health, development, and fitness. And so there's where I kind of differentiate a little bit. But once again, I do not knock it for its skill set or anything like that. I think it is quite challenging as well. You just won't come to class and expect to do like a 10-foot drop or anything like that. Next up, we have hammock. Hammock is similar to aerial yoga as far as where the ends are tied up at the rig point up in the air, and it loops down, creating like a swing. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. The reason why I say like a basket or sack is the fact that you can open up or expand the fabric and turn it into a hammock. So that's one of the reasons why they call it hammock or swing. I'm not sure actually which one's the slang term for it, but that is the next version. The biggest difference here is that it is significantly higher up in the air. This gives you the ability to start doing drops and winding yourself up and flips. And so it's a similar apparatus, it's just set up a little different, but it's mainly the type of class. Once you go into hammock is when you start the spinning and the drops and the tying yourself up and doing all those cool things up in the air. Aerial hammock is no easier or more or less difficult than regular silks. The only difference I will say there, as far as physicality and education and brain power, they are absolutely on par with each other. The only difference I will say is that hammock is a little less climbing and a little more sitting and standing because of the fact that you have that loop at the bottom. So to my surprise, when I finally started taking those classes, I was surprised I would have people come to my classes with 6, 7, 12 months experience in hammock, and I'd be like, sweet, that's awesome, you're gonna rock this class. And then all of a sudden they're struggling on their climbing, and I didn't realize that the fact that even though you have all that slack above you to use, in most cases you are simply standing in the loop and then wrapping yourself up to get that high. So there is a lot more standing. Granted, that still is control and pressure on your body because you are standing on a malleable fabric, not on anything solid, and there are still folds and bends and pinches. So once again, hammock is great. I absolutely love it. Obviously you have moves where you are sitting down, which you can do in silks as well, but you have that knot at the bottom. You don't have to do anything. Excuse me. I apologize. So that is aerial hammock. Once again, there are different builds. You have to adjust the height. It is higher than yoga, but there are height differences based on whether you want to do things below the loop or above it, or a combination of the two. So that kind of dictates where your level is as far as the height of the actual hammock. And of course, height of your body, etc., etc. But you're not really going to find that too much in a class environment. Next up is my primary apparatus, which is silks, also known as tissue. And this is tissue without the E, so TISSU. This is, once again, a fabric. Now, let me go ahead and throw this disclaimer out as well. The tensile strength of these fabrics are absolutely amazing. In most cases, as long as they get the correct quote-unquote aerial fabric or style from the manufacturers, you are going to be more than safe because of the fact that it is so much fabric wrapped up on itself. Like I said, all these, if you extend them open, they actually are as wide as like a curtain. And so having all that fabric folded on itself, containing your weight distributed across it, it is more than enough tensile strength to control yourself. I am 165 pounds and I do drops of a total of like somewhere between, as little as 5 feet to as much as 15-foot drops. So my inertia generates quite a bit of pressure. And so close of over 1,000. I want to say, I need to double check the math. It might be like around 800 pounds of pressure when I do my drops and catch myself, and the fabric doesn't even show a single fiber tearing. And so you are more than safe in these things, especially if you aren't doing anything that requires a certain level of inertia. I will say this though, they are still fabric. So those stiletto nails, wedding rings, bracelets, things like that are still pose a huge threat to them and can potentially cause a life-threatening issue should they puncture a hole and start ripping threads and cause them to fray. So make sure you guys, when you show up to these or do your own things, that your nails, rings, bracelets, watches, all those things are taken into consideration and put away. So there's the safety concern from that. The other issue is make sure that the actual mounting rigging is secure. And any studio you go to, you can ask the owners to show you the certification of the rigging and the equipment. And, they have to have it for insurance to verify that it is rigged up on stuff that can maintain the weight and handle and etc. It's been inspected. It has been inspected, etc., etc. Sorry guys if I catch myself every once in a while. I'm trying to slow down my speech a little bit and make sure I am pronouncing everything and speaking clearly for podcast purposes as well as teaching. So I have been working on that. Now silks, it is a little bit more taxing on your body physically only because of the fact that there is no break spot, so to speak, or nothing for you to rest unless you make it of your own body or you manipulating the fabric. What I mean is there's similar things like foot locks or hip keys where you are locking yourself up in the air or giving yourself a platform to rest. The problem with that is the fact that you have to generate that kind of rest position for yourself. You can't just plop down into it. So foot lock, you have to essentially tie the silks off around your foot, and then it becomes your new floor where you can stand on that without necessarily having to pull yourself up. But when you're not in one of those positions, you are somehow holding yourself up, and that could be taxing, forgiving, to someone's endurance and strength. So that is something to consider. The bonus here is the fact that there are two separate fabrics that you can play on, which allows you to footlock both feet at the same time on different fabrics. It lets you tie up in one and play around with the other for aesthetic purposes. It lets you climb one. So it lets you wrap in different ways around yourself for aesthetic purposes as well. So the versatility of the silks is quite nice, where you can, the sky's the limit as far as what you can and can't do. One slight downside to this is just the fact that in the outdoor setting, there is no weight to it. It is just fabric. So much like curtains in a windy day, it will flap around in the wind. And so it could pose quite a bit of difficulty for both your practice and performances, as I've experienced firsthand having a rig here at my home outside. So yeah, those are silks. One other thing I will say is that silks are quite malleable. They do bend and shape fairly easily, so they do tend to pinch sometimes because of the fact that, like, as long as you keep wiggling little micro movements, then the silks have the ability to continue to get tighter and tighter around whatever body part you have them wrapped around. So that is something to take into consideration. Another thing that most people struggle with when they are first starting to do aerial stuff is the body awareness and stability. So a lot of times you'll see people lock themselves up in a foot lock to rest, but they're still swinging around like Tarzan on a vine. And the reason being is that it requires some stability and balance engagement from yourself and your muscles to keep yourself upright. So something to think about. Next up on our handy dandy list is rope. This is another one of my personal favorites. Rope is just that. It's a giant thick rope. There are two small variations to it. First off, there was actually a sleeve over it, a type of webbing that they place over it so it's nice and smooth, so it doesn't have the grooves or the threads like you would see at your regular gym or PE class rope. But it is a rope. And another version, a variant of it that you see, has a sleeve over it that's suede type, and so it's a little bit softer on your hands. I slightly dislike these only because of the fact that they have a little more play and give to them, so to speak. So when you grab them, there's a little bit of bounce, and I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of that, considering I like doing stunts on ropes, but it is a little bit easier on your hands and smoother on your body. But rope is a lot of fun. One, it is only one solid piece that you have to worry about, unlike obviously silks or hammock where you have two poles. Here on rope, you only have one. Second, it is a lot stiffer, so less malleable than silks. So you can manipulate it a little bit better with as far as holding it out and throwing it around your body and stuff like that. Because of the fact that it's a lot stiffer, it creates a little bit easier of a platform to, create a loop because of that. And also it grips itself a lot better. It has a lot more bite to it than silks do. The drawback to that is that the bite bites back. So it is a lot easier to pinch yourself or to give yourself an Indian burn type thing on rope because of the fact that the actual apparatus is slightly more coarse, if you will. But just like pole, just like silks, over time you become accustomed to it. Like for example, with rope, there is something called a toe climb, where you are essentially climbing. You're still using your hands a little bit, but you are grabbing the rope in between your big toe and the next digit and climbing, alternating like that. So the first couple of times people do it, they're like, oh my god, it's like ripping the skin off the in between my toes, and it's super painful and da 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 da. But after a handful of times of doing it, your body grows accustomed to it. It's not nearly as bad, and so you can carry on with your life. And so, like with all things, even though it is a little more rough, one can say that pole is tougher because of the fact that it's metal, it doesn't give. So to each their own. So like with all things, beauty is pain, pain is beauty. So you must deal with it. But it's really not that bad, honestly. The more you do it, the more you become accustomed to it. It's not nearly as painful. I will throw this out, like I said, much like pole, where people are trying to wear as little clothing as possible so they have as much grip through their skin. The cool thing about aerial stuff is that in most cases when you are performing, if you choose to perform, you'll be dressed in some super elaborate costume. So in most cases when you practice, you are able to practice with like a long sleeve shirt or a tank top or a shirt, a compression shirt, as well as leggings. Leggings are probably one of the most popular ways to practice on aerials. Forgive me, guys, because they offer a little bit of grip if you get the correct legging, as well as allowing you to do the same move that might rub or cross the fabric or rope multiple times. The leggings offer you some protection. That being said, I have, me included, had plenty of people go through their leggings because they're either fraying the actual threads by sliding them through the fabric or whatnot, or they're just stretching too far when the silks or rope are wrapped around a certain part. So like for example, if you're in a hip hitch or hip key where it's wrapped around one leg only, and then you start to do like some kind of splitty move, then obviously the leggings are trapped, and so you pop some threads and they begin to disintegrate. So that's something to consider. Don't wear your most expensive and super cool ones to silks or rope or any aero class. All right, moving right along, we have straps. So straps is slightly one of the more advanced apparatus. I would not recommend beginners going to do this. First, it is extremely painful on your wrist. Once again, like all things, I am just trying to be real with you guys, but tons of people do it all the time, including kids. I've seen sub 10-year-old boys and girls get on straps and be absolutely fine. So not to discourage you, the difference is here that straps are typically about 1 inch to 1.5 inches tubular nylon straps or webbing that have hand loops at the end. And so you typically lock in your hands through the loops or around your wrist in a manner. And so because of the fact that you're swinging, traveling around, being a lot more dynamic on straps, and it is just webbing that's not exactly built for comfort, it's built for strength and efficiency, it tends to rub your wrists and palms quite a bit and create some bruising, some chafing, etc., etc. But the more you do it, the more you get over it, unless you're doing some super stunty moves like I do sometimes. Even occasionally I still get bruises from time to time. But straps, once again, are 2 nylon webbings. They can be as long or as short as you want them to be. The biggest difference there is obviously how high your rig point is, as well as... Sorry, I do apologize. Jeez, I might need some coffee or something. Anywho, but like usual, I try not to edit these things out, so you guys know I am a human being and person like you, and not some amazing superhuman or anything like that. Though, sweet baby Jesus, do I wish. Anywho, the straps are a lot of fun. The straps does require a decent amount of strength. To make it look good, I feel like you require a decent amount of flexibility as well, because a lot of the times you're making shapes. The one other thing to straps is that it is encouraged to spin on straps, and that's the thing. Like, if you guys remember those carnival rides when you were kids, the Gravitron and the Vomit Comet and all those things, if you get really dizzy really easy and it like throws you off for the day, like you get major headaches and stuff, straps might not be the one for you, because you spin a lot. Now, don't get me wrong, it is super, super cool and a ton of fun, and you can do some super amazing shapes and dynamic things on straps because they don't take up a lot of space and they're super mobile. But yeah, you will have a lot of spinning in your future. So if you're not rolling them up, you're spinning on them. So just FYI for that, if you are a slightly more in shape person, you absolutely love straps. By all means, once again, do not let this deter you. Go check it out. It is a lot of fun. One other disclaimer I will say, while I have it on the top of my forefront of my mind, is that sometimes the apparatus you love the most is not the one you're going to start with. You might end up being like, oh, I saw Cesar do silks, I want to go do silks. And so you take a silks class and you're like, all right, this is not great, but it's not bad. And then you end up taking a hammock class and falling in love with it. That is 100% all right. There's absolutely no wrong answer. But that's going to do it for straps. Not too much going on there. They're pretty straightforward. Like I said, this is just a basic breakthrough of it. I'm not going to like give you guys the full lowdown, but straps are a lot of fun. Typically, the coolest things you can do on them is on a pulley system where someone is able to lift you up off the ground to a higher starting position. Reason being is as you're becoming more dynamic, you are able to swing around, and so you want a little bit of clearance below, underneath your legs, so you can swing similar to like what the either rings, the Olympic rings, or the unparalleled bars. I feel like there's a lot of moves there that remind me of that. I could be inaccurate. The rings are probably really close to what straps are. But yeah, so definitely check those out. And of course, you can always YouTube and Instagram and Google all these things if you guys want to see them in action on your own. Next up, we have the Lyra. Lyra is basically a hoop or a metal ring. It's suspended up in the air, either by 1 point or 2. There's no wrong answer. They're both correct based on what kind of actions and moves you want to do. Same thing as with hammock, because there is a loop for you to sit in and there's a top bar and a bottom bar. The height of it is going to be based on the routine. Like for example, we have 5 liras, I think now in my studio, and there's 3 different heights. We have a really tall one, we have 2 medium ones, and 2 low ones. And so there is no wrong answer to that. It's just a matter of what you want to do. Obviously in the low ones, you are unable to do things on the ground or below them because they're so low, but because they're so low, it's easier to get into them. And then vice versa, the ones that are up high, you can spin similar to straps, you can do other things, and you just have to climb up to get into it. And then of course, the amount of strap you have, or the toe strap that you have above it, is what you can do, because there are things that you can do above it in the straps to essentially like fold the Lyra and do all kinds of neat things. So that is something to consider as well. But Lyra is a lot of fun. It does kind of offer the same bonuses as hammock, where it gives you a place to sit. Sorry about that, guys. It gives you a place to sit in between, and the fact that it's metal means that it's not going anywhere, so you know exactly where it's at. Some Lyras are simply powder coated, so it's just metal, and some Lyras people tape up for grip purposes, as well as they just might not like the feel of the metal, so they're taped up with grip tape or gym tape, not exactly like skateboard tape or anything crazy like that, but the stuff that most people wrap their hands and feet with when they're working out and stuff like that. They usually take and wrap it up. The cool thing about that is that obviously it allows you to kind of snazz up your Lyra a little bit for a show, or just to make it look pretty for a photo shoot, etc. You see that a little bit with silks as well. People and hammock, people and rope, I guess, all of these apparatuses, you can pick different colors for the sleeves or the fabric and stuff like that. I personally myself like more neutral colors, because it just kind of stands out a little bit cleaner. I've seen plenty of people with like tie-dye silks, and even though it looks super cool when they're open, and somewhat as you see the colors change, it kind of camouflages the flyer a little bit, so you lose some of the value of the moves they're doing. But hey, to each their own preference. By all means, I know I'm a pretty boring individual when it comes to colors, and that is okay. If you want to be absolutely extravagant, there is nothing wrong with that at all. For example, I do like having a black rope. The instructor that taught me, shout out to Emma Dilemma, she uses a black rope, and super cool because most of the time when she performs, she has a black curtain or a black background or a black wall or something like that. And so sometimes it looks like she's simply flying in the air because, well, you can't see the rope on the background. You just see her. So I think that's super cool and something to think about. My most popular silks are my silver ones, simply because of the fact that every time I perform at a club, whatever color the lights are is the color my silks are, and so the silks are able to change colors. So something, a little snippet out there for you as well. But yeah, Lyra is a lot of fun. You could do doubles on all these apparatus. Lyra is a little bit, you have to make sure you're a little bit bendy, but it is super cool because it is a solid metal apparatus. So you're able to kind of push off of it and do different things for doubles. I think the max I've seen on one Lyra during class when they were doing a photo shoot, I think they had 7 ladies on a Lyra. Granted, not all 7 were hanging off the Lyra. Like, I think 3 of them were hanging off each other, but hey, that's the fun with doubles. But yeah, Lyra is a lot of fun. I've seen some super strong power moves, a lot of spinning as well. You can do a ton of spinning in Lyra. Absolute crazy amount. So that's something to consider. In fact, one of the local burlesque performers, her stage name has Dizzy in it. And I'm blanking on the actual full name right now for some strange reason because I'm thinking of her real name. But yeah, she has Dizzy in her name and she absolutely just goes to town spinning. So I get dizzy just watching her. Moving right along, guys, we have Cloud Seat / Cloud Swing. I'm not exactly 100% sure which one is the more accurate, so please forgive me. I should, because I kind of do a variant of this. But this is pretty much having 2 toe straps or 2 kinds of webbing that are similarly hung as like aerial hammock, where the ends are wrapped up top and then it loops on the bottom. Obviously, you can always use just a full loop. And so these are, it's a variant of like, you're kind of sitting, creating a bunch of poses using 2 different apparatuses. It's almost like silks, except you have like the loops there permanently. And sometimes they're even, sometimes they're uneven. You don't really see this in class too much. I think this is something you have to pursue on your own because it's such a niche that most cases they don't offer an instructor to do it. But it's kind of cool because you're able to manipulate things. You're able to create shapes while sitting down. You're able to extend your body parts across further than you normally would. It's just a different kind of thing, I guess, a different apparatus. I don't know too much about this because I haven't seen it very often. The reason why I did mention it is because it is a thing. So I think it's a graduation from like hammock. I think people that do a lot of hammock eventually incorporate some cloud seat into, or cloud swing into their repertoire, because you are able, I did meet a singer, there you go, that's one of the biggest things I came across. Was one of the times I was practicing a pink cover band singer. I don't know how that works, what it's called, but I don't think impersonator is the right word, but she she was a singer. She would sing Pink songs, and because Pink did silks, she does it out of cloud seat, so she's able to kind of like get into her splits and like sit down and lay down while she's singing and do things like that, which is actually funny because one of the instructors here locally actually does it out of the next one, which a variant of this, which is chains. Yes, that's right, and some of you already know I do chains. Forgive me. So chains, so typically there's 2 ways that I've seen chains be done. A is the cloud seat way, where you take the 2 loops and you connect them to one point, and so you're able to once again do shapes laying down, sitting down, kind of on your pits, scissor around them, invert them, all those things. It just gives you multiple ways to play around where you're not necessarily always holding yourself up, and you're kind of able to use 2 different sides, similar to silks but not locked into like hammock. The other variation I've seen of chains is obviously in the hammock, where it is just 1 loop, and that is perfectly fine as well. I've done that myself a couple times, and there isn't much difference to hammock or cloud seat, so that's why I'm not gonna go too deep into it. But it's literally just chains. Like, granted, you have to have a certain tensile strength of chain. You can't just go and grab the little rinky-dink ones you use to decorate like your garden or something like that, or to hang up your child's swing. These are actual like towable chains, but mine are typically, from what I've seen, a lot thicker than most people's. But I like it. It sounds great. It looks great. It is a heck of a lot harder to hang them because of the fact that they weigh so much. But hey, you get a workout and a good warm up while you're trying to set them up and put them down. And of course, aesthetically, they look absolutely great. The one thing I will say about chains is make sure, if you are going to jump into this, make sure they are smoothed out, so you don't want a bunch of sharp edges like cutting you. And then of course I went with I believe galvanized is what it's called, so like I don't have all the metal flakes like chipping away at me while I'm on it. I typically try to do chains in just pants because I think it looks cooler and more impressive that way. I will not lie, it's strictly for show and aesthetic purposes, but I've seen plenty of people perform chains fully dressed. And I'm not kidding you, I mean fully dressed, i.e. leather knee-high boots, leather gloves, a jacket, and like pants. So like they're practically dressed and they're flying. To each their own. I'm not knocking either way. There's no right and wrong answer. When I'm doing something that I think is either painful, I need to work up towards, or I'm going to do it a bunch of times, I'd rather save my skin, then I go ahead and wear like a sweater while I'm doing it. And then once I get comfortable with it, I'll make sure I can do it shirtless to make sure it doesn't, like, the pain levels don't mess up my move. And then I'll perform it. But yeah, chains, other than if you really want to check the box, or you're doing it for a show, or you want the aesthetic purpose of people like, oh my God, he's in chains, then there's absolutely no reason to do it. But they are fun, so definitely check it out. Once again, Cloud Swing or Cloud Seat. Next up, we have something that I have not been on, but I have seen quite a bit of it. And of course, once again, shout out to Emma Dilemma. This is one of her big signature ones. She actually did it for the New Year's party I had last year. And this is the aerial cube. So it is exactly what it sounds like. It is just a metal cube. The size or diameter or parameter, I think it's just size, right? Because it's square. I don't think it's diameter. Maybe diameter can be used here. I know that's for a circle, but it is it can vary based on what you need it for. I've seen cubes like, for example, Emma's once again is actually smaller than the average cube that you see because she is a smaller aerialist. But it works for her. It's great. It fits in her truck, and she flies and makes it look absolutely amazing. And then you can make it larger for larger people, and you can make it even larger for doubles. I've seen that as well. Cube's big enough for people to both get in it and make all kinds of double shapes and things like that. And it's actually super, super cool. In most cases I've seen, you do not hang it square. You actually hang it kind of at an angle, almost like it's spinning on one of its corners. And so that is literally just it. It's a metal cube. Here is when your flexibility really comes into play, because a lot of the metal apparatus the aesthetics of it is making a shape. So, you know, putting your leg here, taking your arm there, bending your back here, turning over there. And so as these apparatus are spinning, you are creating a shape that looks aesthetically pleasing and impressive. There are some feats of strength you can do here, but not many. Like I said, most of it is making just simply shapes that look super awesome, which is super cool and just as difficult. So there you have to be a little more bendy, a little more flexible for that to really take advantage. That's why you don't see me on it, because I am not bendy despite trying to become more flexible over the last year and a half. So I do not do it because, to me, I'm a perfectionist and I look at me making shapes and it's just absolutely atrocious. But yeah, there's cube there. And actually, I believe several schools here in Dallas do teach cube. So I think you can find it in most. I think it's common enough to where, don't get me wrong, once again, you're not going to have an actual cube class, but you can talk to instructors and get private lessons, or potentially use the school's cube if that's kind of suiting your fancy. Or of course, you can always get your own. I will say this though, make sure that once again, you're getting the material thick enough to support your weight, as well as that the weldings and stuff are correct and accurate to support, you know, way above what your weight is. And always, of course, even if you're teeny tiny, you're like 80 pounds soaking wet, just remember that you generate quite a bit of inertia when you are dropping or moving or flinging yourself. So you really want to, multiply that number quite a bit. Next up on the metal apparatus, there is spiral, which is kind of exactly, once again, what it sounds. Most of these metal apparatus are exactly what they sound like. And just to touch on this, and actually I'll just kind of throw all these all together. As you get more advanced, you'll see a lot of people, especially people that have been flying for a long time, they're trying to create the next best thing and for their show, because they want to be unique and impressive. So there's all kinds of metal apparatus out there that people fly on. Any shape you can think of, someone's had it made. There are liras that are modified to look like hearts. There are liras that are modified to look like half moons or crescent moons. I've seen all kinds of weird oblong shapes. I think that's where the spiral came from. I've seen an anchor. I recently saw that on Instagram. So any kind of metal shape that people can make, or any kind of shape period that people can make into a metal apparatus that can be hung, can become something you can fly on, which I think is super exciting and super fun. But so a spiral is kind of neat because it's a spiral. It swirls down, you hang it from the top, it's off the ground, and sometimes they're a little bit bendy, so they stretch a little bit, sometimes they're not. Or maybe it's just optical illusion, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, the thing is they're huge, so they're super hard to transport because you can fit a human being in them as well as outside of them. And then once again, you're just kind of propping up shapes, kind of playing Twister with yourself, trying to figure out how to make the coolest shapes. So all those things kind of go hand in hand. And you'll probably see those if you go to multiple circus events and stuff. People, once again, trying to reinvent the wheel, if you will. And speaking of wheel, we have Sear Wheel is going to be the last one on my list for right now. Sear Wheel is literally just a huge ring. And I think it's become popular enough where a lot of you might have seen it. I've had a handful of people ask me about it. There is one gentleman in Dallas that does it professionally, by the name of Frank Chapman. So definitely check him out if you are looking to do it. And this is straight up spinning, straight up. And that's why I've never been interested in it, because that's all you do. It is a giant metal ring that you stand in, and you essentially get it going. You spin it kind of like you spin a coin on a table, and it keeps itself up while it's spinning with inertia and momentum. It is the same thing, except you are in it. And it's super cool. You get to do flips in it. You get to hang upside down. You get to like post yourself, and it's a metal ring. These, I think, are a little more specific to your body size, because you have to be able to kind of reach the edges, but not too much. Like, I don't know, it's a weird shape, but yeah, they're super cool. You might have seen it on a couple of shows. I think I saw a clip of it on America's Got Talent or something like that. But you just stand in it and you spin, and then you make cool shapes while it's spinning. So yeah, it doesn't really appeal to me all that much, because I don't like spinning that much, and I can't make shapes. But Sear Wheel is super cool, and if you're into it, you can check that out. That's a CYR wheel. But yeah, I think that's it. That'll do it, guys. Sweet. All right, so that's all the aerial stuff. Once again, there is tons of more things that I missed, I'm sure, and then a ton of more depth I could have gone into each one of these. But this is kind of a crash course to let you know if you are interested in doing this as a hobby, interested in doing it as fitness, or potentially to add it to your show. So definitely check that out. One thing I will say, if you are trying to do this professionally, all these apparatus give you a lot more freedom when you're able to set them up on a pulley system. So you have it to where they can ascend and descend on command, and you have a group of friends that's willing to pull you up and down. Or if your show is super expensive and pricey, you're able to actually get a super high-speed motor that can do that. But yeah, just having the ability to elevate or ascend or descend in the air while you're doing stuff adds for a super cool effect. But I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments below about this episode. If you want more insight into things like fire poi and all the other crazy things they do, choreography, etc., etc. Moving right along, guys, we'll talk about our best and worst events of the week. Sadly, because of my knee, I am still out of commission, not at the club, sadly. I know this is killing me. The worst event would probably be that I am still injured. Like, working on it, deal with the VA, trying to find out. It's not severe in the respects of, like, you know, I'm completely bedridden and stuff like that, but there is still some pain, there is still some discomfort, and we all know how valuable our knees are, so I'm not one to risk a lifelong injury when it could be avoided. So I'm trying to confirm how bad it actually is, and if it's just a slow healing process, or if something really bad happened. Nothing to worry everyone about, just kind of throwing it out there. So that's probably my least favorite event of the week. My favorite event of the week, let's see. The upside to that is the fact that I've been able to catch up on a ton of editing. And so I'm able to stream a little bit more, which I'm starting to build momentum there and get a lot of positive feedback from the community, and people really enjoying it. And the community there is growing. I actually generated enough income to invest back in the channel and hired an independent contractor to design some cool, super neat graphics and transitions and emotes and stuff for me that I'm super excited to post and have my community play around with. So yeah, that's super exciting. And the creative bubble is still going. I have a ton of things on the books that I want to do, all kinds of neat things. So the juices are a-flowing, ladies and gentlemen. The juices are a-flowing. So yeah, that's my best and worst event. And super sweet, super to the point. That being said, guys, that's going to do it for us this week, or this show. Once again, I am Cesar the Crowd Pleaser. You can catch me on Facebook at Cesar Collazo, Collazo. Catch me on Instagram and Twitter at CesarLabear7. And then, of course, you can catch me streaming live every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ. Keep on the lookout for the next big event. I believe the next event we're going to have at LeBear is the November strip-off, which is the way we end the year with a bang. It is the strip-off I try to win every year, though Jason has been just absolutely decimating it lately. That dude is super talented. I love that kid. So yeah, stay tuned for that to get the lockdown date of when that is so you can purchase your tickets and reserve your tables. But that is, guys, that's going to do it. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. And until next time, keep bringing the rain.
On tablets and phones, Caesar's crowd pleasers is now on. Caesar, the crowd pleaser. If you need to pick me up, ladies, we gon' change your demeanor. Caesar, the crowd pleaser. We gon' do a little dance, we gon' make the naysayers believe us.